Hey there, so I want to talk to you today about winter growing. It is definitely very different from growing in the summertime, and I really do enjoy it for a few reasons. The first of which is it's very relaxing. I know it's cold and sometimes it's tough to be outside, and the work is a little bit different, but you know, in the summertime things are growing so quickly that when they need to be harvested, they need to be harvested. And in the wintertime, things grow slowly, so it's just a lot more relaxing because there's no rush on things. Things happen when they happen, and it's just a nice way to get some income when maybe you weren't thinking about getting some income in the wintertime. So today I'm going to talk about some of the things that I have going on here and things that you can be doing on your farm. And I want to talk about some of the basic techniques and things you can do to extend your season and maybe get some crops out during the winter. Just for some context for you guys, it is right now in early to mid-November, and I am in Raleigh, North Carolina, which is zone 7B. Tonight we're having our first frost, which should be lows in the high 20s. We've had a low 30s, but not much came of it, so I'm trying to get the farm ready for some colder weather. I did a little bit of winter growing last year, but I'm planning on doing a little bit more this year. I'm definitely behind in my planting and growing, but it is what it is, and we're going to try to make it work. So keep this all in mind for when you guys are watching this. I know if you guys are further north than me, you probably already experienced a few frosts or maybe even some snow. And if you're further south, maybe you haven't gotten a frost yet, or maybe you don't get a frost. But I want to show you some of the simple things that I use here at the farm and a couple different options for you if you're looking to do some winter growing. Alright, so one of the first things I want to point out about winter growing is make sure you're growing crops that are more cold tolerant. So things like big greens, lettuce, stuff like that, you know, brassicas, a lot of them. You know, you're not going to be growing summer crops. So for me, right now, what I'm growing is lettuce, kale, arugula, and some green onion. That's basically it. I mean, that's pretty much what I've been growing lately anyway, so works well in the wintertime. So in terms of getting it in the ground, make sure you get things large enough ahead of time so that when the cold comes in and the lower light and less heat units as the fall and winter roll in, is that things are big enough, and so you're basically just keeping them alive. They're not going to grow very much. They'll grow really, really slowly, so keep that in mind, especially if you're growing like big kale or collards or chard, you know, bigger sort of leafy vegetables. Make sure they're nice and big before the cold comes in, because things grow really, really slowly in the winter. Another thing is that you don't really have to water very much in the winter time. So once it starts getting really cold, you basically don't water at all, maybe once in a while. Maybe the precipitation will take care of it without irrigation. So one thing, if you guys haven't seen my irrigation video, I'll put a link up here, but what I did on all the ends of all of my lines, I just put a valve in there so I can easily open it up and let all the water drain out. That way I don't get anything freezing. I do have the overhead out here, which if I do need to irrigate, I can just close those valves, hook it back up and turn it on. And they also have drip inside the tunnel. So let's talk about different options in terms of covering your beds to keep them safe from the frost. First option, which is my least favorite, is row cover. It comes in different thicknesses. People call it, most of it's made by Agribon, or people call it Remay. It's basically all the same stuff. It comes in different thicknesses and weights. There's a light, a medium, and a heavy. This is some of the lighter stuff that I was using this summer for some insect netting, which didn't really work out, but I didn't really want to go buy more. So if you need more protection, you can either double it up if you have the lighter stuff, or you can get the heavier stuff. What's going on here is I have a 10-foot piece, and this covers 2 beds, and underneath I just have these wire hoops here, which you can see, and you want to space them out every, I don't know, 5-6 feet, whatever works for you guys. I just want to make sure that the row cover is not touching the plants, because you need that little bit of air that's in there. So if you guys have ever worked with row cover before, you probably have a love-hate relationship with it. I generally hate it because it rips when I look at it funny. So it is inexpensive, but it doesn't last very long. Another thing that's really helpful is with all of this sort of setup is these guys here. These are spring clamps, and you get these at Home Depot or Lowe's. They're $1. Go buy yourself a box or 2 of them. You'll use them everywhere. They're super, super handy. Even with row cover, you can just take the clip and clip it on here, and that'll keep it from floating around too. The other thing I have are sandbags, and I'll leave a link down for the sandbags I bought. There's nothing special about them, but they seem to be working. And then the hoops, you can either buy a roll of wire and cut them at whatever length you need, I bought these from Dubois, so I'll leave a link for that too. They've been fine and no complaints about it, and I'm not sponsored by them or anything, but that's where I bought them from. I got a huge pack for like $100 and it does the whole farm and more. So yeah, so that's pretty much it for row cover. Not much there, just it is kind of a pain to work with and it is very fragile, so keep all that in mind. All right, a slightly better option here is what's called a poly low tunnel. I got this idea from Curtis Stone in some of his older videos. It is definitely a step up from row cover. Still, it takes a lot of effort, but it does work pretty well. And it will protect against like snow and stuff like that if you have a little bit more snow. I wouldn't say a heavy snow load, but you know, it is a little bit more solid, and you do get that really quick warming effect because of the poly. The way this is set up, these are 10-foot pieces of 1/2-inch electrical conduit that you get at any store like Home Depot or Lowe's, bent into a semicircle, and here's a little picture of a jig that I made out of just some wood and some screws. Basically, you just measure the diameter that you want. I took a string to draw a semicircle on it and put some screws in there and bent it that way. Again, that was just a way to do this where it really costs very little to put this together. They do sell jigs to bend hoops. You can get them at a bunch of different places like Johnny's and some other places, but again, trying to do this on the cheap, that's what I used. Are they perfectly straight? No. Will they work? Yeah. So then I have a rope that goes across the top here and it just loops across and goes down, and then it's tied together at the ends with a piece of rebar, and that acts as a purlin, or just basically a way to hold the hoops together to keep it a little bit more rigid. On the ends, I have the spring clamps here, clipping it on, and then sandbags along the way. If you put these two together, you can sort of use sandbags in the middle to hold down two different sets. So what are the benefits of this? It's a lot more stable. It provides a really nice warming environment for the plants underneath. It acts more like a greenhouse than the row cover, and protects it a lot better. The other thing is, you know, if you do need to irrigate it, you do have to pull it off. All this stuff, I mean, once you have to either irrigate or harvest or cultivate, you know, you have to remove everything to get in there. So with the low tunnels or with the row cover, there's a lot of moving things around, but again, super cheap. I got all this stuff for a couple $100. I can cover 4 beds with it. I got the plastic from Bootstrap Farmer. I'll put a link down below for that so you can check that out. But basically, I mean, it's pretty easy to piece together, and you can put it together once you get all the stuff, you know, within a few hours. It's also very portable. You can move it from bed to bed, which I love. So it's very flexible. But, you know, again, day-to-day work, it does require a little bit of labor. Now, if it does get really warm during the day, one thing you can do is just pull up the ends here and just clip them up and leave the ends open, and you get quite a bit of breeze. But if it does get a little bit warmer than that, you will have to pull it off. And generally what I do there is I just leave the sandbags on the side and pull the plastic over so I'm not having to remove all the sandbags just to get some ventilation in there. So yeah, those are the low tunnels. They've been great. They're an easy way to add protection very quickly and very inexpensively. So this is my favorite way of growing in the wintertime, and it is the most expensive way to get started. If you guys have a tunnel, a high tunnel of any sort, it is just awesome. I have one tunnel here. It's 12 feet wide by 48 feet long. I've talked about this in other videos. I was growing tomatoes and eggplants in here in the summer. I'm behind in planting, as I mentioned, so I will be putting lettuce in this center bed here. I just planted some arugula here on the outer beds. I was able to germinate stuff in the wintertime last year with the cover, and this is a technique that was really designed by Elliot Coleman. It works really well. He grows in Maine at Four Season Farm. You guys probably don't know who he is, obviously, but this provides unbelievable protection. I mean, it's almost like magic. So if you have, this is a single layer unheated polytunnel that really doesn't seal very well, and if you do row cover on top of the beds inside the tunnel, you can grow pretty much anything you want in here. It's pretty awesome. Again, you're not going to get a ton of growth because there's not a lot of light in the wintertime, but in terms of just temperature and keeping things alive and growing, you can do great. I grew a lot of lettuce in here last year. It worked really well. So I do have the drip installed in here, so when I do need to irrigate, I can close down the drain valves and run some irrigation. But as I said, you really don't need a lot of watering. With this stuff in here, I don't need sandbags because in the wintertime, this tunnel's all closed up and there's not much wind in here. And so I just use some clips on the ends to hold it in place. And this one I haven't cinched down yet, but I just put this in here. So this is an awesome way to grow in the wintertime. So hopefully that was a nice little update for you guys and gave you some ideas for cost-effective solutions for keeping your crops covered and protected in the wintertime. We'll see how it goes. This is, again, my second winter growing, but a lot of these techniques work pretty well and they're pretty simple, so I like that. Now, what are some other things you can be doing on the farm in terms of income besides growing vegetables outside? Well, You know, if you're in a colder environment, it's going to be even trickier to grow outside without having greenhouses that have heat in them or lights. So some of the things I'm doing here, you guys know I have chickens, and I'll still be having those all winter. They do lay less than they do in the summertime, but they still lay, and they're eggs that I can sell. I don't give them supplemental light. Some people do. That's your own decision to make, but I don't do that, so I get less yield from them during the winter. The other thing is microgreens, so I'll be growing those year-round, as you guys know, and I grow those in my garage. And one thing to point out about that is that microgreens are a great crop if you can sell them, because they're very consistent and you can do it year-round, and that's, you know, probably the only crop like that for me in my context here that I can do. The other thing about that is that I grow them in my garage, and in the summertime it's really hot here, so I have a window unit air conditioner, and that pulls all the humidity out of the air. So as soon as I turned that off basically for the fall and winter, I had to set up a dehumidifier in there to pull the humidity out of the air. If it's too humid wherever you're growing microgreens, you're going to get a lot of mold issues, so keep that in mind. Anyways, guys, I just want to share some of the things I got going on right now and hopefully give you a couple of ideas for ways that you can be growing this winter. And this may not be for profit, but even a couple of beds for your family. So hope you found this useful. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Hey there, so it's early November. Hey there, so it's early to mid-November here at Sattin Hill Farm, and I am preparing for winter growing. Mira! Mira! They're south of me, maybe haven't gotten it yet, or you don't get a frost. So let me just show you a little bit of what I got going on here. And I'm the owner of Sattin Hill Farm, and we are located in coverings that I'm using and some of the strategies that you guys might be able to use this year or in future years. I want to talk about winter growing today and some of the really basic things you can implement to Let's first talk about the tunnels.